Have you ever walked away from a situation and thought, why did I say yes to that? Or stayed awake at night wondering why you trusted someone who ended up betraying you? It's like a quiet voice inside whispers, something wasn't right, but you can't quite explain what. You just feel it in your gut, in the back of your mind, in the hollow silence that follows certain choices. If you've ever felt this way, and chances are you have, then this video is not just for you, it's about you. Because the brutal unspoken truth is this: you are being manipulated every single day. Not in some dramatic movie-style fashion, not with hypnosis or a flashing pocket watch, but in far more effective, silent, and invisible ways. By people close to you, by the media, by those in positions of power, by those who have mastered the subtle psychological art of influence. And the worst part, you often don't even realize it's happening. Because the most dangerous manipulation isn't the one that controls your hands, it's the one that controls your mind while convincing you it was your own idea. You think you made the decision. You believe it was your fault. You feel the guilt. You would carry the doubt. And that's the genius of it. You're being moved like a chess piece on a board you didn't even know existed by someone who is quietly watching, planning, nudging. They don't force, they don't shout, they don't demand. They simply understand what you need, what you fear, what you lack, and they use it. And if you're sitting there thinking, this doesn't apply to me, pause, because that exact confidence is the first symptom of successful manipulation. A skilled manipulator doesn't want you to feel controlled. They want you to feel free while they guide you like a puppeteer with invisible strings. This video isn't here to soothe you, it's here to wake you up. We won't sugarcoat. We won't dance around discomfort. Instead, we'll give you what most people are afraid to offer: clarity, awareness, tools. Because manipulation is not always dramatic, it's often gentle, polite, even flattering. As Machiavelli understood centuries ago, true manipulators don't need force. They don't need authority. They need access to your insecurities, your emotional patterns, your blind spots. They study you. They learn your rhythm, your pauses, your insecurities, the way your eyes shift when you're unsure. They watch how you crave approval, how you fear rejection, how uncomfortable you are with confrontation. And then they act. You'll start to see it clearly. Some of them use charm. They'll compliment you. They'll mirror your values. They'll make you feel special, different, chosen. They'll present themselves as the person you've been waiting for. And in doing so, they create something dangerous: emotional debt. Because when someone gives you what you long for, your instinct tells you to give something back. You offer your time, your energy, your loyalty, your trust. Others manipulate through guilt. They play the victim. They talk about how no one understands them, how they're all alone, how you're the only one they can rely on. They don't demand directly. They don't need to. A silent look of sadness, a subtle jab. These are their weapons. You begin to feel responsible for their emotional well-being. Saying no starts to feel cruel. You begin to carry the weight of their life like it's your own. And then there are those who use fear. They paint worst-case scenarios. If you do this, you'll lose me. If you don't help me, I'll fall apart. If you leave, you'll regret it forever. They don't lock you in a cage. They trap you in your own imagination. You become paralyzed not by force, but by the idea that the world without them is dangerous, empty, or meaningless. These are not just random tactics. They are deliberate strategies. Age-old psychological mechanisms that have shaped relationships, controlled empires, and manipulated minds since the dawn of civilization. Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince revealed with cold precision how manipulation is a tool of power, one that does not require violence, only understanding. He wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, for all can see, but few can feel." And that's what manipulation is: a show, a theater of illusion, a visual and emotional performance crafted to look like truth. The manipulator is the director. You are the actor playing a role in a story you didn't write. They assign the script. They set the scene. And the terrifying part is you believe it's real. But here's the key. The theater only works because something within you allows it. A silent vulnerability, a hunger for something you haven't yet named, a wound that hasn't healed, an old belief that you've never questioned. And that's where this video goes next. Because to truly protect yourself from manipulation, you have to confront what makes you available to it. That means identifying your emotional weak points, the unspoken needs, the unresolved fears, the hidden guilt. Until you see those things clearly, you'll keep calling manipulation love. You'll call it loyalty. You'll call it respect. But it's not. And it's time to stop mistaking change for care. If what I've said so far is striking a nerve, hit the subscribe button now. Not just for more content like this, but because you're ready to stop living in the shadows of other people's control. Thank you for supporting this journey toward truth. Let me be clear. You are not manipulated because you are weak. You are manipulated because you are human. Because within every human being, there is a blind spot, a place where emotion overrides logic, where our need to belong, to be loved, to be understood, opens the door to control. Some of us are haunted by the need for approval. We grew up learning that affection must be earned, not given. So we strive. We bend. We contort ourselves to be liked, believing that if we please, we will be safe. This is the manipulator's playground. They throw you crumbs of praise and watch as you offer your soul in return. They echo your insecurities and then pose as your cure. Others are burdened by guilt. We were taught that putting ourselves first is selfish, that saying no is unkind, that sacrifice is noble, even if it costs us our peace. And so even when our instincts scream danger, we silence them. We tolerate. We comply. We apologize for protecting ourselves. The manipulator sees this. They disguise their needs as morality. They twist your empathy into obedience. And still others carry fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of being unloved. They will stay in toxic relationships, endure emotional manipulation, and accept disrespect just to avoid the pain of solitude. And this is where we go next. Because manipulation isn't just something that happens to you, it's something that finds a doorway through you. And unless you understand those doorways, you'll never truly be free. In the next segment, we're going to expose those vulnerabilities. Not to shame you, but to give you your power back. Because real freedom doesn't come from doing what you want. It comes from knowing why you want it. Previously, we explored how manipulators prey on emotional blind spots, on the wounds and desires we often hide even from ourselves. Now we need to take a closer look at what makes us vulnerable in the first place, and more importantly, how to stop being an easy target. The manipulator doesn't just lie. They don't need to scream control or threaten. Instead, they offer you something irresistible, a false sense of security. And just when you begin to feel safe, supported, and seen, they threaten to take it away. They create a story in which your worth is conditional, where your value depends on how well you serve them, where the fear of being left unloved or rejected becomes stronger than your desire to be free. They whisper without words, "Without me, you are nothing." And the terrifying part, you believe it because a part of you already told yourself that long before they did. But how does that belief even take root? Where do these emotional vulnerabilities come from? They're not random. They don't show up out of thin air. They are planted often long ago in childhood, in heartbreak, in unresolved pain. They are the result of silent traumas, learned behaviors, and inherited emotional conditioning. Maybe you were taught that love must be earned, that being good means sacrificing your needs, that saying no is selfish, that conflict means abandonment. And so you learn to please, to apologize for existing, to soften your voice, to disappear when things got uncomfortable. And this right here is what manipulators look for. They don't need to overpower you. They just find the soft spots, the ones you haven't healed yet, the ones you don't even know are bleeding. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that real power didn't require brute force, just insight. The nature of peoples is variable, he wrote, and while it is easy to convince them of something, it is difficult to hold them in that conviction. What does that mean? It means people can be moved by words, by emotions, by fear, but unless they become aware, they remain susceptible to the next whisper, the next illusion, the next manipulator. And that's why manipulators don't convince, they invade. They move into the empty spaces within you. They settle where you haven't yet built clarity. They thrive in the fog of unawareness. But here's the empowering truth: there is a way out. You don't have to live your life as an emotional puppet reacting to every push and pull. You don't have to be predictable. You don't have to be vulnerable to anyone who knows which buttons to press. You can learn to seal those internal gaps. You can build emotional armor not to become cold, but to become conscious. And this armor begins with one thing, self-awareness. So ask yourself right now, what makes you give in? Is it the fear of disappointing someone, the anxiety that you'll be left behind, the compulsion to keep the peace even when it costs you your truth? Step one is recognizing those triggers. Observe your responses. Slow down your reactions. Notice when your body tenses, when your breath shortens, when your voice falters. These are clues, emotional breadcrumbs that lead to the places where you've been most wounded. Step two is what Machiavelli would call strategic detachment. You must learn to witness without immediately engaging. You must pause before you react. You must hear the flattery without letting it define your worth. You must feel the pressure without caving to it. Because manipulators rely on emotional urgency, they need you to feel before you think. So, think. Take your time. Create space between stimulus and response. Step three, become unpredictable. Manipulators are strategists. They map your reactions. They know your next move before you do. They cry and you comfort. They compliment and you melt. They guilt trip and you surrender. Break the pattern. Say no when they expect a yes. Remain silent when they want a reaction. Walk away when they think you'll chase. Surprise disrupts their script and forces their true motives into the light. Another critical pillar in emotional immunity is identity. The more solid your self-understanding is, the less you need validation. And the less you need validation, the less leverage anyone has over you. Manipulators thrive on distorting your self-image. They gaslight. They cause you to doubt your memories, your values, your choices. They break your confidence, not with blows, but with subtle erosion. You're being dramatic, you're overreacting, you're imagining things. But when your inner foundation is strong, their whispers have nowhere to take root. Remember, this is training. Emotional immunity doesn't come from one powerful video, it comes from consistent self-work, from daily acts of awareness, from resisting the urge to please, from honoring your own boundaries even when others guilt you for it, from protecting your clarity like it's your oxygen, because in a manipulative world it is. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men must either be pampered or destroyed, for if you merely offend them, they will take revenge." It's a brutal observation, but it reveals a truth about power dynamics. There is no neutral ground. You either take control of your emotional reality or someone else will. But what if the manipulator isn't just someone at the office or online? What if they're closer? What if they're in your home? What if they're your partner, your parent, your closest friend? What if you can't just cut them off? This is where it gets harder. This is where the cost of emotional clarity rises. This is where everything you've learned will be tested. Because it's one thing to recognize manipulation in strangers. It's another thing entirely to admit it when it's someone you love. And that's where we're headed next. In the next part of this video, we'll confront the most painful and complex layer of this journey: how to reclaim your autonomy when the person pulling the strings is someone who says they care. We'll dive into emotional enmeshment, guilt disguised as loyalty, and how to rebuild yourself even when your world is woven into theirs. Because manipulation wrapped in love is the hardest prison to escape. If this is resonating, if you feel like these words are naming something you've never had the language for, then this journey isn't just relevant, it's necessary. And if you want to go deeper, check out my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It unpacks Jung's foundational ideas and gives you practical tools to navigate emotional complexity and reclaim your mind. The link is pinned in the comments. So now the question is, are you ready to look at the one who manipulates and love them anyway from a distance? Are you ready to set yourself free? Then keep watching. Because the hardest part where love and power collide is just ahead. In the last part, we explored how manipulation often wears the mask of love. Now we go deeper into the hardest truth of all, that emotional control doesn't always come from strangers, it often comes from the people closest to us. This isn't about power. It's about control. At work, control might wear a professional mask disguised as loyalty. You hear it in phrases like, "You should be grateful. Who else would give you a chance like this?" But when gratitude is weaponized, used to bind you with guilt, it's no longer kindness. It's pure manipulation. And here's a hard truth many people resist. Proximity does not justify emotional violation. Love does not grant someone the right to shape your thoughts with guilt or bend your will with fear. To break free from manipulation in close relationships, we must first accept something deeply uncomfortable. Not every relationship where there is affection is healthy. Not everyone who says they love you knows how to love in a way that honors your freedom. Not every bond is meant to protect you. Some are designed consciously or unconsciously to keep you small. But how do you escape when the ties are this close? How do you move when the emotional web is built with words like care, tradition, loyalty? You begin with boundaries. Clear, calm, non-negotiable boundaries. A no spoken with quiet certainty carries more power than hours of explanation. Next comes exposure, not to shame the other, but to affirm yourself. Say what you see, say what you feel, say what you will no longer tolerate, not to change them, but to validate you. And then stand firm, because the storm will come. There will be pushback, insults, victimhood, passive-aggressive silence, tears. The manipulator feeds on hesitation. They test your limits, hoping your guilt will win. But here's the brutal reality. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to walk away, to step out of the dysfunctional dance, to stop explaining, to stop rescuing, to let the other person finally face their own emptiness without using you as the crutch. Because as long as you keep trying to fix them, to save them, to love them into change, they won't. And slowly you will lose yourself. This is not an easy decision. It will ache. It may shatter illusions. It may change how others see you. But it's necessary. Because only those who free themselves from emotional bondage begin to see the world and people with new eyes. Eyes that aren't fooled by charm, that don't fall for emotional games, that recognize manipulation beneath even the sweetest words. And this clarity brings us to a new stage in our journey. How do we navigate a world that is built on influence, where marketing, media, politics, even personal relationships are designed to guide your choices without you knowing? This is where we turn to Machiavelli, not for cynicism, but for strategy. Machiavelli didn't write to inspire, he wrote to reveal. He didn't care about sounding virtuous. He cared about truth, raw, uncomfortable, and unfiltered. And in today's world, if you want to survive psychologically, you must learn to think like him. With cold clarity, with emotional detachment, with the ability to see through illusions before they trap you. Because make no mistake, we live in an era of mass manipulation. Everything is narrative, everything is influence, everything is image. The people who understand this shape public opinion, shape elections, shape your purchases, and yes, even shape your self-perception. Machiavelli knew that human beings are driven by two main forces: interest and emotion. And those who understand this hold power. He famously wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. All can see, but few can feel." Translation: what people perceive is more powerful than what is real. Control the perception, you control the behavior. So what do you do with that? You stop living on emotional autopilot. Machiavelli didn't believe in one-size-fits-all morality. He believed in context. Sometimes kindness is weakness. Sometimes honesty is dangerous. Sometimes virtue is just a mask people wear when they're too afraid to think strategically. If you want to be free, you must stop confusing goodness with naivety. Start playing the game and playing it well. Step 1, observation. Read people not by what they say, but by what they do. Watch how they behave when no one's watching. Track patterns. Ignore promises. Pay attention to how someone makes you feel after every interaction. If their presence leaves you anxious, guilty, or doubting yourself, that's data. Step 2, silence. One of the greatest forms of power is stillness. Most people talk too much. They reveal too much. They react too fast. But the Machiavellian understands silence confuses. Silence commands respect. Silence breaks the rhythm of manipulation. When you do not react as expected, the manipulator loses control of the narrative. You shift the balance. Step 3, master ambiguity. Machiavelli taught that power is often maintained not by truth, but by the appearance of truth. In the modern world, that means learning to adapt without losing yourself. You don't need to reveal everything. You don't need to speak every thought. You don't need to prove your heart to anyone. Real power is what you withhold, not what you display. Strategic communication is saying just enough to shape perception and keeping the rest for yourself. And most importantly, take full responsibility for your inner world. The manipulator feeds on instability. They pounce when you're insecure, when you hesitate, when you crave approval. Your defense, know yourself. Regulate your emotions. Stay rooted even when someone tries to uproot you. Machiavelli wrote, "The prudent man follows in the path of those who have succeeded, so that even if he does not reach their level, he may at least come close." You don't have to be ruthless. You don't have to abandon your compassion. But you do have to stop being a pawn. Because in a world that profits from your emotional confusion, clarity is your rebellion. You now know the tactics. You've seen how manipulation plays out in everyday life, at work, in love, and society itself. But knowledge without application is just decoration. So the next step is the most crucial of all. How do you turn this awareness into unshakable strength? In other words, how do you use the wisdom of those who mastered the game to stop being a pawn inside it? You've come this far. You now understand the structure of emotional manipulation. You've seen how charm, guilt, fear, and flattery can be used like weapons. You've begun building the psychological armor needed to stand your ground. But one question remains, perhaps the most important of all. What now? What do you do with this knowledge? How do you turn it into something real? How do you transform awareness into power, into a new way of thinking, acting, and being? Because let's be honest, understanding manipulation is not enough. You must rebuild your relationship with your own mind. You must cut the last invisible strings that still control you from within. So ask yourself, are you ready? Because what comes next isn't comfortable. It's not poetic. It's not easy to swallow, but it's necessary. Here it is, the brutal truth. As long as you do not take full control of your own mind, someone else will. And that someone doesn't always look like a villain. It's not always a cold, calculating figure lurking in the shadows. Sometimes it's the person sitting next to you smiling. Sometimes it's a phrase you heard as a child that still echoes in your decisions. Sometimes it's your culture, your tradition, your community. It's the invisible voice whispering, "Stay small, be quiet, don't rock the boat." The deepest manipulation is not in what others say to you, it's in what you've learned to say to yourself. It's in the thoughts you never question, the emotions you've mistaken for facts, the behaviors you've repeated because they kept you accepted even if they never made you free. You call it choice, but was it truly your own? Or was it fear in disguise? Was it guilt dressed as virtue? Was it a craving for approval wrapped up as morality? Freedom begins not when you change your outer world, but when you stop calling conditioning free will. But let me be clear, that kind of freedom comes with a cost. You must shatter the illusion that everyone has good intentions. You must dismantle the image you've clung to of yourself as someone who must always be nice, agreeable, understanding. You must get used to the silence that follows when you say no. You must accept the loneliness that comes with stepping out of emotional systems that once felt like home. You must grieve the parts of you that were shaped by trying to please others. And you must tolerate the discomfort of becoming someone who no longer asks for permission to exist. You will stop being manipulated the day you realize you no longer need to be liked. You no longer fear disappointing someone. You no longer seek validation from people who use your kindness as a leash. Because clarity is more valuable than comfort. Peace is more sacred than approval. And truth, even when it stings, will always liberate you. And that's the moment you reclaim your power. It's when you look into the eyes of someone who once controlled you, knowingly or not, and you calmly say no more. No more guilt trips. No more emotional hostage taking. No more trading your peace for someone else's comfort. So what now? What you do with this knowledge is entirely up to you. You can walk away, forget everything you have heard, and go back to playing the same game unaware that you're being played. Or you can begin today, right now, to train your mind, to observe, to question, to pause before reacting, to break the cycle. You can become someone who doesn't bend under pressure, who no longer falls for emotional traps, who no longer sacrifices themselves just to be accepted by people who never saw them clearly in the first place. Now it's your turn to speak. Comment below. When was the moment in your life when the mask fell? When did you realize you were being manipulated? Was it a relationship, a friendship, a family dynamic, a workplace? Or maybe you're still inside the web. Maybe you're struggling to get out. Then write that too. because there's no shame in recognizing the trap. Verbalizing it, putting it into words is the first step to breaking the cycle. And if this video opened your eyes even just a little, don't stop here. The next video will take you even further because knowledge is not a switch. It's a staircase. And every step you take lifts you further out of darkness and deeper into clarity. Don't turn back. Keep climbing. Because the truth doesn't just set you free, it transforms you. I'll see you there.